Actors, we've all got issues, so let's talk about them. I'm your host, Juan Ayala, and this is Actors with Issues. In today's bite-sized interview, we speak with Jonah Feingold, director of EXmas, a new Christmas comedy starring Robbie Amell and Leighton Meester, premiering November 17th on Freevee. So before we dive into EXmas, I have to ask, what's your favorite holiday movie?
Oh, are we counting Hook? Does Hook count as a Christmas movie to you and me?
It's like, does Die Hard count as a Christmas movie? If
It's
it
the
does,
same.
then...
It's the same. Yeah, exactly. It's the same. So I would say Hook is my favorite, but if we're gonna go more on the nose, I'm really, for me, there's always a special place in my heart for the movie The Holiday, which is Nancy Meyers' entry into the Christmas movie canon.
Yeah. And I'm, curious, growing up, were there any filmmakers you admired early in your career that had an influence on you as your career started to grow?
Oh, yeah. At first, it was Spielberg. I was like, this is the GOAT. This is all who I want to replicate, the way he moves the camera, the way he has his actors talking. And then I got really into other filmmakers, more in my genre of choice. So Nora Ephron and Rob Reiner and Nancy Meyers. And then I sort of looked at who inspired them, and it went back to Albert Brooks, and then it went back to Billy Wilder, and then it went to Ernst Lubitsch and Preston Sturges and Howard Hawks, and all the way to like D.W. Griffith. Like it kind of just goes all the way back. Ultimately, you can find it. Yeah, Buster Keaton. So I do really love the screwball comedies right now. I'm going through a big Howard Hawks phase. So I've been watching a lot of his stuff and Hitchcock and just the way he's moving the camera. So, a lot of directors I've just named, but I like directors that you can tell when they've had their hand on the movie. You can tell that they made it. There's an artistry to it. I don't care if the movie's good or bad. If I can tell that someone made this movie, I'm impressed and I like it.
So how did the project come your way? Were you approached? Did you have to sort of pitch yourself? How did the whole process go for you?
I was approached. I think they had a start date. They were going to make a Christmas movie and it was going to come out, and they were looking for a director to come in and basically be able to move at the pace they wanted while also have a vision for this movie. And I think they had seen Dating in New York and At Midnight, and maybe I had said, you know what, a quick turnaround doesn't scare me. And I would love nothing more than to go to Canada and put a great cast around this movie. And that's what we did. And, I had pitched a vision. I think their vision for the movie was a Christmas film that checks all the boxes, but still does something slightly different. A little bit edgy, a little bit more comedic, and a little bit more deep with the emotions, and still silly and goofy, but like something that stands out. And that was also my vision. And so we were super aligned and went off and got to make this wonderful little comedy.
So I loved At Midnight and its story of, this sort of like unexpected connection and romance. Meanwhile, EXmas is kind of the opposite of that. It's a severed connection that is slowly rebuilding. So, despite Graham's efforts throughout the movie. So what was your experience tackling that story in EXmas compared to At Midnight? Did you have a different approach in your direction, or was it sort of kept keeping the style the same?
I love that the way you sort of described At Midnight is, this new romance, this sort of, that was like the location was a big part of that movie At Midnight, and like the magic of it all, and the magic at midnight that they met, and like this forbidden love. Like you said, for EXmas, it's like, how do you tell a rom-com where 70% of the movie they're actually broken up, and the your typical structure of meet cute, break up, get back together is different. They've already met, and they've already broken up, and now you have to, now the whole structure has to be different. And so my way in was like Home Alone with exes, and I was like, okay, that's the beginning of the movie. And then the second part of the movie is, if you could really, the consequences of your actions. You guys played too many games with each other, and now here's why things are going to go wrong emotionally, physically, and all the above. So I think that was a big part of it. And it was a little easier because there was always conflict in a scene. They didn't like each other. At Midnight, it's hard because so much of it is in falling in love. So you have to do other things like create this romantic energy. But when you have conflict in a scene, it's a little bit easier to find the root of the scene. Two people want different things. That helps drive the characters and the actors' motivation.
And it's interesting how you described sort of the process of making the movie, how you wanted to sort of make it like Home Alone, but with starting the movie with them already sort of broken up already. It's almost like, wait, is this a sequel to a movie that it's like, is this part two where they break up and they have to rebuild it? It's just so interesting because, like you said, there is a sort of formula, and this starts sort of later and then has to sort of like almost work in reverse, which is really interesting.
Exactly. And that was the purpose of that scene where you sort of see them falling in love, was to give you a little glimpse of what their life was prior to this setup and everything.
Were there any key takeaways during the production lessons you learned along the way?
I've talked a little bit about in these interviews is like working with 8 different actors is a big thing. It's a big, at midnight, you kind of have 2 main actors and you have a great supporting cast, but you never really had a scene with 8 characters at the same time.
Right.
Um, they're challenging to do, especially when they each need their own coverage because it's comedic. So, it's this big orchestration. Making a Christmas movie during the summer is no easy thing to do. You have to learn about fake snow, how
Yeah.
snow works, what trees would be green, what trees wouldn't be green. We worked with an animal. I got to work with a goat, which are not easy to work with, and ice hockey. Hockey is really, really hard to direct. I don't skate, so I'm out there on a helmet. I got a helmet on. I got the little like scooter thing, and I feel like I'm like 88, like with my back hunched over, and I'm like got a monitor in my hand, and it was a tough day. It was a really tough day, but I'm actually quite happy with the way this hockey sequence came out. So
Yeah.
that was fun.
And actors hear all the time that, especially these days, you have to be a multi-hyphenate. You have to write, you have to direct, and all of that. So, for any actor who's looking to direct their first short or write a web series, what advice do you have for them who are trying to step into that new facet?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the best advice I have for anyone making anything is pick a start date and stick to it. That whether or not it's with a big crew or a small crew, show up to your location with your script on that date and be prepared to make something. I think a lot of people are simply just scared to hit that record button. I know that's kind of a cliche thing to say, but truly, my advice is always pick a start date and things will start to happen, and tell people that you're making something, because then people help you and they say, oh, I have a location, or I have a camera person, or do you need a sound person? And simply by manifesting it that way, it's all about manifestation. I mean, I start an independent movie on Monday, and 3 months ago there was no movie, and now there is. And like it comes from manifesting something and being prepared to show up and be there on that day to make that thing. So I would say that.
Mm. And in terms of like, with, hindsight's always 2020. We always
Yeah.
wish we knew so much back when we first started. So what comes to mind is something now that you wish you learned earlier on?
Oh, that was all going to work out, and that these
Yeah.
these things that you worry about, are nothing to worry about. Like, worry about the story and the way the audience is going to feel, and not about all this other small bullshit that has no impact into the movie. People always worry about things. Oh, this actor's too old to play this part, or they don't, something, the way something looks, or a small little continuity thing. Like, none of that matters. When someone watches a movie, you need to have interesting characters that have wants and needs and feel real, and you have a good ending. And then you made a good movie.
Mm.
And just work towards that. And people, as opposed to worrying about all the other small things that don't matter.
Awesome. Well, Jonah, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. Again, congrats on the movie. It's such a fun watch, and definitely among the many great Christmas classics that are
Yeah.
out there. But thank you so much for taking the time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time as well. I'm glad you liked it. Midnight. That was a not so long ago. So that, that's still very much in my heart.
Yeah. And for all of you watching, don't forget you can stream EXmas starting November 17th on Freevee.
Woo!
Thanks for joining us. Be sure to subscribe to Actors with Issues on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts, and visit our YouTube channel for full video interviews. Actors with Issues is executive produced and hosted by Juan Ayala. See you next time.